So, Peter, we're back today. What are we going to talk about today?
To be honest, Sarah, I really don't know, but I'd love to talk about leather, right? And
Always good.
And to go back to its very origins and the material that it was probably 20, 30,000 years ago, and think about developments in leather, and then think about what we've been doing over the last 3 months in terms of developing a brand new approach to leather and how it's used. So if that isn't too immense a topic,
Okay,
let's go for that.
Starting from the year minus dot.
Yes, let's go for that. You see, it's this marvellous material, which is to do with nature, obviously, which is to do with all the species that have developed over the last so many hundreds of thousands of years, and is to do with the use of them when they die. And without putting too fine a point on it, when an animal dies, its skin can be taken and made into leather. Leather being the way of preserving the skin, because if you didn't make leather out of the skin, it would putrefy and bacteria would make it disappear. So leather has got roots that go back so far that I don't think there is a material in many ways other than stones and different woods that goes back as far. But it's an incredible flexible material, and it's a material which has been made flexible, particularly over the last, say, 50, 70 years. If you go back before that, leather essentially was quite firm. It had its roots in equestrian uses when we had horses for transport, and it was a material that remained firm until really it started to be tanned with chromium, and then different fat liquors evolved that could make it much softer. But it was firm when I started, and that's quite a long time ago. So we've got a material that's always been firm. It's, if you take it off the animal's back and you just dry it, it's incredibly firm. It's
as rawhide.
As rawhide.
Yeah.
So a piece of rawhide essentially is a very firm, flat piece of material.
And are you talking cowhides here mainly?
It really can be any. There are 6 or 7 main skin types in the world out of tens of thousands of different species, but there are only 5 or 6 of them which are essentially made into leather on any commercial scale. But the cowhide is probably the largest one, sheep and goats and all those different types of skins. When you take them off the animal's back and you allow them to dry, then they dry incredibly firm. Okay. And it's if you go through Africa, it's used as a way of preserving the skins. So
is that when they like to string them up?
Yeah, they string them up and sun dry them, and that makes them last forever. And parchment essentially has had the hair taken off, and then it's been dried out, and that's incredibly flat and pretty well lasts forever in terms that how we're using the term. So in its very raw state, it's a firm, flat material, which different technologies over the last, say, 5,000 years have gradually made it softer and more usable. I mean, when people were using animal skins for clothing, if you go back 5 to 10,000 years, then they were obviously made softer by the addition of different oils. So
like Native American
absolutely,
deerskin,
like brain tanning history in any but the principles of making leather soft are relatively clear, and they've been studied scientifically. So you have to coat the fibres with materials that make the fibres move over each other, and in that way they remain soft when it's dried. So the making of leather is essentially about moving the fibre structure. It's about coating the fibres in materials that allow the fibre structure to move over each other. So it's been many, many thousands of years that principle has been used. So I guess what we've been doing over the last 3 months is revisiting that principle of altering the properties of that animal skin in very different ways to what one normally would see on leather catwalks, or if you get your shoes from Clark's. You know, the essence of leather there is its softness. But in doing that, it's really only one possibility for how you process an animal skin. What we've been investigating is how you can make that animal's skin soft and then hard and then soft again. Now, that sounds as though we've got $1 billion budget to do it, but it hasn't been done that way.
We have a shed.
We've got a shed, and it's been done by reinvention. It's been done by reinvention of only over the last 1,000 years. We haven't gone back 15,000 years and started making incredibly basic types of leather. But over the last 1,000 years, there have been techniques that have been used and forgotten about. And so what we've been doing is taking one of those techniques that was used in medieval times, used in the 18th century, used during the Second World War, and taking the technique that involved putting materials into the structure of leather that really made the leather quite hard. And what better material to take than a natural wax? So we've been impregnating the grain and the flesh structure of that animal skin with natural beeswax. And once that's done, and then once you dry the leather out, the wax sets and it becomes incredibly firm. You know, we've had lots of examples previously, but this is my favourite now. Sarah made this. It's just out of an A3 piece of leather, but it's an incredibly firm bit of material.
I wanted a little tray, a little drink tray to just bring my cup of tea and a plate up on. And I couldn't find one anywhere. I had an idea of what I wanted, just a kind of wooden one. And then I was just, well, we have some leather that might do it. So it's really simple, and I'll put a little template pattern of how I did it. But I literally just cut slits round, and then it's got 4 rivets in. And then with the folding technique and just keeping it pressed flat down, I managed to get a tray. So this has had the Bourneville Brown stain put on it, about 2 or 3 coats, because the first coat, when you put stains on, tends to sit on the surface. And then I've just done a bit of embellishing. It came out, it was prototype, so I didn't really imagine it was going to be very perfect, but actually I'm quite pleased. In a way, its imperfections and some of the bows and moulds in it have given it quite a lot of characteristic, and using it with the traditional rivets as well has given it quite a kind of patina to it. But yeah, and it's not going to break if I drop it.
No, and it's light.
And it's light,
it's wonderful.
Yeah.
And the overall look of it is different to anything that I've ever seen in leather. It's a look which is almost incorporating the fashion that there's been over the last 25, 30 years for making leather look old and making it vintage. So it's got a real element of vintage about it, but it's taking vintage to the ultimate. It really is a look the way you look at it and you can't really tell it is leather. Now, some people will say that's a disadvantage until they feel it, until they know all the functional properties of it. And when they're told it's leather, they will forever call it leather because it's got a mystery about it.
It's just what we've not been presented with. So,
Yes,
yeah,
yeah.
so that's
So
where the assumption is.
nobody has ever made a tray like that before. That sounds a bit grand, but within the world of leather, it is different. It's about now. It's about the fashion of now in wonderful, fashionable little dinner parties that they have in this beautiful village where we are now. And you wouldn't be ashamed to serve something on this. And people,
Whiskey
yeah,
and soda.
whiskey. They wouldn't think you were odd. Well, especially in our village of Tansley.
So, Peter, if you were to make, because people do make stuff out of just the normal cowhide veg tan with wet forming and shaping. So,
Yeah.
what's giving this a difference then? Why is this different to that?
Well,
This leather.
if you just do it on pure physicality, it's different. It's harder.
It's much harder.
It's harder. This way of making leather was first used medieval times, and I think even Roman times, for making different forms of armour that would repel arrows. So it has an incredible firmness to it. When you heat the original leather is this colour, this type of leather. You heat this and it becomes almost as flexible as it was when it was a raw skin, because the wax melts inside the structure, and it's
You can see that on the other. If you look, there's one with a demonstration in the part 2 talking, which we did last week. You can actually see how soft it gets when it's heated.
So we're going from hard. I suppose originally we were soft, then we're hard, heat it, then we're soft again, mould it, then it dries within 3 to 5 minutes to be like this.
Really quickly.
So it is a reinvention of how leather has been made in the past. And as we've said previously, this, if you had it on your bath, you could even have the whiskey in your bath. It floats.
It floats. Oh yes, that's true. Like the
Yes.
boat we talked about last week.
Absolutely.
One thing when I was making it that I've noticed when I've been doing the bowls is when you're manipulating it with your fingers and you're pressing in with your fingers, you can leave darkened finger and thumb prints into it as you are working. And I realised I could get these back out again before I coloured it by just getting my hot air gun and just remelting around where those finger marks were. So sometimes they create, I don't know if there's any shown because you're always using your technique with the bowls, aren't you, Peter? And I've coloured all these. But yeah, sometimes you might be able to see it on one of my sheaths, but that you can actually sort of almost see like the fingerprints of where you've been moving around. So if you want to get those out and get it more even again before you put your colour on, then just give it a little blast with your hairdryer or your hot air gun, just to remelt that top surface of the wax, and it will smooth out any finger marks that you've made in it.
Yeah. And if we talk about colouring it, once it's in the established form that you want it, if we look at these colour possibilities, using Phoebe's Pro Dyes, there's the whole possibilities. They're slightly muted because of the base colour of the material, but they're muted in almost an autumnal way. They make Phoebe's colours far more like nature. So it's perfectly possible to get even colour on the surface, or it's perfectly possible to get aged colour onto the surface. So there's a colour range that people can use. There's a material which is old and new, all at the same time. And in truth, it fits in with an incredible trend where lots of other crafts and almost industries are looking at the reinvention of things, looking at it's so silly to keep on trying to, with all respect to Elon, get to Mars and back in 5 minutes. I mean, we can only do that for so long as a race of people. But what we can do is concentrate far more locally, and we can make things how they've been made in the past, but reinvent them for the present. So it's this real combination of the past and the present for the future that we think this represents from a leather point of view. So what we'd like to do is show you just one or two of the little things that we've been making and how we've been doing it. I mean, some of these are really, you can never quite get them reflected as beautiful as they are in real life on the TV, but they have such a novel appearance and such a unique appearance for leather. If you've got a business and you're in an ambience where there are 5 or 6 other leather workers there, having a section of the stand you've got based on this sort of principle, I think would just make people stand out as unique. And the lovely thing about it is it's got the capability of going into lots of different areas where leather is routinely used. I mean, the aspect of sheaths for scissors is so easily made. This, without exaggerating, can be made in 5 minutes. Now, I wondered about saying that. I wondered about making it sound so easy and how people would think it devalued the craft. But in the end, a craft is in the final product. The beauty and the uniqueness and the functionality of the final product which is made. And this, I can defend this on those grounds with any material or with any other leather making technique.
Also, if you watch programs like Make It to Market and some of these other ones, one of the things they say is about having some of these things that you can reproduce, you can make quickly, that you can make stock of.
Yeah.
It gives you time to then spend on your more elaborate, more bespoke things. It gives you an introduction to your products for your customers to come and see you and have something from you that's more affordable because it's not got that time component in it.
Yeah.
And it also gives you a place to, if you get asked to stock in a shop or a gallery where you need to then have something that you can give at margin to some, so they can make their margin. It gives you those windows of opportunity of getting something in. So having something that you have worked out as your, I forget what they have it as a term, don't they? But their kind of base repeatable product at your lower price point is quite an important consideration, I think.
Absolutely, and if you consider the people that you know that are involved in leatherwork, they fall in different categories, but basically there are 2. One who people, or 3, will make it more complicated. The hobbyist, somebody who does it because it's a beautiful, relaxing, creative hobby, and people are satisfied just doing it like that. Then there's the paying hobbyist, people that charge a little for what they do to cover the materials that they're using. So it's a way of paying for your hobby. And then there are the people that want to make, we'll just call it a small business out of it.
A side hustle.
Yeah, a craft business. Now, the reason why taking that jump from hobbyist to a small business often fails is people, A, because people just want to create new things all the time and get a bit bored making things continuously. That's a natural creative flair that people have. But B, it's because they don't have the resilience and the fight to make something consistently. And that's for many reasons. But what this does is to give that capability relatively quickly in your own unique style. Because if our dream came true and we had everybody in the world making leather like this, people would have to differentiate themselves between each other. And that's more than possible. It really gives the capability of, we were talking about the number of techniques of decorating leather, and Sarah's going to write a book that there are 10 different techniques that can be used to do the surface decoration of leather. And this is probably the easiest one that I've seen. And it's the one which can be made reproducible, but give sort of unique looks. I mean, just experimenting around the other day, making little teacups.
So this was one. So when we were talking before, and some of you will have watched my colander episode where I was making some of these bowls with the colander. My best ones I did give away, so I've only got the one with the bit of the wobble around it. But Peter uses this little brass bowl for his and gets things more like this. Now this one was with the really thick leather, you can see it there. And you get quite a difference when you're shaping and firming in on a bowl like this. Even with the same size circle of leather, the thickness gives a different way that it will take. So that one gave a really thick edge and it actually gave quite a perfect shaped bowl. That one has as well. Peter's done very well with these bowls. But this one, when I was trying it, it was quite a thin piece. We've had some of it thinned down. So when I put it in, I got that pocket of air that came to a pleat on the inside. So I squeezed it round so it was just in one place. And then when I took it out, I folded it out the other way and pinched it in and let it dry. So it's actually got a little hook cup handle. So I kind of quite like these. I'm kind of thinking I might make a whole little set of different size ones that would nest in together as well. So I'm thinking that's kind of quite a nice way to sort out the pleat and the fold when you're shaping. And
the good thing about it is you can use your creativity to both differentiate yourself and get satisfaction out of doing new things pretty quickly. I just, for the hell of it, going to start off and I'll just do one with fingers, hands, I think too clever. There's a little bowl. There you are. That's from my best friend.
Oh.
Little bowl. And what I'm just going to do, and I promise Sarah I won't iron her wonderful table here, is just iron.
Oh yeah, that's fine.
Maybe you can see the wax sort of melting. The wax is melting, it's quite hot on the surface, but you can see how easy it is to melt the wax, and it's becoming much softer. So one can do this for 2-3 minutes, or you can do it by a very innovative piece of machinery that we've discovered and developed, and that's called a toaster. We can toast the leather. So over this side we have something that looks as though it would control our spaceship going to Mars, which is a toaster. So with a toaster it's even easier than with an iron. So there it's much, much softer, and we have our little bowl we put it in the bowl and work it down. Now that you would usually do it using a conventional mould technique, but this one is just making these shallow little dishes. One can just press it down and probably illustrate the fingerprint phenomenon, which
Maybe it's just me.
I never seem to be able to reproduce.
I must just have really heavy-handed fingers.
So this is pressing it down into the shape. And you can think of so many uses of something so simple as this. It's perfectly feasible to serve food from it. It's coated in beeswax, which, as far as I know, no bees have been hurt in the preparation of it. Or maybe one or two workers have. That's another point. What is possible with this sort of technique? And they'd come and look and they'd say, "Oh, that looks very urban chic," or something like that. Now, we don't want to be so pretentious as calling it urban chic.
Or paying 300,000 to a consultant
or
for
we
the
haven't
privilege.
we've got no money either. So if you can think of a name for this, if you can think of a name for the type of products and the type of leather that's been made using this technique, we'd be more than obliged.